Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Skull Session Recruiting Podcast, brought to you by BuckeyeHuddle.com. I'm Marc Givler, joined by Andrew Ellis. We are going to break down a few pressing issues today in Ohio State recruiting. We were initially, when we planned the show, we were going to talk about some upcoming decision dates that have been scheduled by Ohio State targets. We're still going to do that, but now we've got another thing to talk about. We're going to talk about the more immediate thing here in Jakob Weatherspoon, four-star Ohio defensive back, Avon, Ohio, longtime Ohio State commit, decommits from the Buckeyes on Wednesday and flips to North Carolina in a move that I think nobody except maybe Devin Sanchez, if you read Twitter, saw coming. Andrew, just first of all, your reaction to that?
I mean, it caught me off guard. It very much did. And then, when the tweet came out about the flip, I kind of started thinking about how he took sort of an undercover visit to Penn State. Maybe I think it was an official, maybe it wasn't, but I think there might've been some underlying issues there with like communication with the staff or lack thereof. He's a good player. And I know his name has been sort of synonymous with like Jordan Hancock's name as far as like his ultimate position. And I think it's a loss. Honestly, they signed two cornerbacks in 2025. Obviously one of those is Devin Sanchez, which doesn't hurt. But as far as the numbers go, I mean, right now you've got Jordan Thomas committed and you've missed some guys. Elbert Hill's committed to USC. Danny Odom is committed to Nebraska. So, I mean, this is a loss as far as at least the numbers perspective goes. And I know I've seen some buzz on the forum about, has Tim Walton lost his fastball? And I wouldn't quite go that far, but yeah, this was a surprising move. I mean, maybe he wants to go play for the best NFL coach of all time, but I don't know, kind of came out of nowhere to me.
Yeah, I don't want to say I'm like never caught off guard by decommitments but there are usually, I guess, bigger signs there, either from the player side of the aisle or the school side of the aisle. You get the sense that, even though they're committed right now, don't get too comfortable. Like this might not be a long-term thing. Like obviously you go back to like last year, I think anyone with a brain knew that Naeem Offord was going to be tough to hold on to and that was going to be kind of a grind until the very end. So no one was like stunned, in my opinion, when he ultimately didn't sign with Ohio State. This one did really, especially the timing of it, caught me. Like this wasn't like a late decision in like December where it's like, man, they brought in two more defensive backs. And now I'm like, am I getting pushed out of this class? He's versatile. He can play really just about any position. He can certainly play slot corner. He can certainly play safety. I've seen him do both at a very high level. I think he probably has enough ability to play outside at corner too, if he wanted to. So it was very awkward for me to kind of see that. It was again, kind of out of left field. There's some other guys in the class. I'm not going to throw out names now because then it's like, Marc's saying they're going to decommit. And I'm not saying that, but like that wouldn't have been my first pick. Let's put it that way. That wouldn't have been like my first guess of like, which of these guys is not going to sign with Ohio State. And it's not even really, probably wouldn't have been my first guess of which of these in-state players is not going to sign with Ohio State. So like, this was interesting to me. I agree with you. I think it's a loss. Obviously look, he's not Devin Sanchez, but the versatility he brought to this class, you alluded to it, the numbers, I'm not going to open like the defensive line wounds right now, but this has a feel to that of like, hey, the guys they're getting are really good, but they're not getting enough of them. And it's kind of where they're at right now with defensive back recruiting here the last like cycle and a half. But I don't think Guerreri's lost his fastball. I don't think Walton's lost his fastball. I think these are still two of their better recruiters. But defensive back now goes, Andrew, from like, if they get some more guys, to, they better get another guy or two, right? I mean, doesn't this kind of up the priority here as they try and close us out?
Yeah, I would say two. I mean, I would say definitely try to get two. And, I saw some of the chatter after the decommitment as far as who some of those guys could be. And, I mentioned Danny Odom, and I know we hate talking about those three little words, NIL. And I think Nebraska probably did up the ante a little bit there because I'm pretty sure he gave a commitment to the Ohio State staff at one point. If I could pick one guy for them to go out and get to kind of quote unquote replace Weatherspoon, he would be my pick. I know there's going to be talk about Rock Hill too. I don't I don't know. I don't see that happening really. It just doesn't seem like there's been much buzz on that one at all since the USC commitment, but they need guys. And I don't, last year, what did they took Sanchez. And then what was it? That Jordan Woods kid that was committed to Cincinnati, I want to say. Yep. More of a project type, maybe even a safety as far as his measurables go. I mean, they need 2 more guys, and I would like it to be a guy who's not just a project type. And right now there's not a lot of those names out there unless they can maybe pull off a flip, but we'll see.
Yeah. I'm with you in terms of, trying to go for a flip, trying to go for a guy they're already familiar with, that was already at one point a take for them. That's not now becoming a take because of necessity. Danny Odom would be a name to keep an eye on for sure. There's not a lot there with Rock Hill right now, and I'm not totally surprised by that at this point. I think when you make the decision that he made to kind of go west, not go to the in-state power, that's hard to kind of reverse overnight. It happens. It happens at Glenville if you're Jameer Perez. But I think this was a little bit different than the Jameer Perez situation. This was, I think we're talking kind of different layers to things with Rock being kind of the 5-star, top 1 or 2 player in the state. There's a lot out there about USC and their NIL and the legislation. What's that going to mean for teams like USC who are clearly, and I'm not sour grapes. I'm not, whatever, but USC is clearly spending a lot right now in NIL. And so there are questions about whether the legislation will affect them. Are they going to be able to keep their promises to certain guys in November, December? If there's, certain caps on things, the clearinghouse, is that going to get approved, or some of these deals going to get approved? And every school's going to have to deal with that to an extent, but it doesn't feel like there's a lot there. So, Odom's a good pick, but yeah, I think it's now like one would be nice, but whatever. But now it seems like it would be 2 now, because you're starting to get kind of thin, and you're losing some plan A guys. And so, don't you want 2 at this point?
Yeah, you do. And let me ask you this. So the last few weeks have been sort of rough for Ohio State recruiting, going back to like Meadows committing to Michigan, and I'm not going to relitigate all that. But the timing of this, losing an in-state corner, pretty good player, to a school like UNC, I mean, I randomly will check like Auburn messenger boards to see if there's talk about Womack. And there's stuff on there about, well, USC or Ohio State just lost this kid to Bill Belichick, this in-state kid. Do you think this is a situation where if UNC wins like 2 games, and nobody's predicting them to make the playoff, is this like a situation where if Weatherspoon were to come back and be like, look, I made a bad decision, can you let me back in? Do you think like the Ohio State staff would be like, no, man, you made your bed? Or any thoughts there?
Maybe ask me on August 23rd.
Right.
I think that would largely depend on what Ohio State does between now and then. I don't think, given kind of how this played out, I don't think Ohio State is going to sit there and if they've picked up, let's say they've picked up Womack and Odom, for example, I don't think they're going to sit there and be like, oh yeah, sure. And same NIL terms and, and everything. Like that might be a difficult sell, I think, to get back to Ohio State. Now, if Rock Hill calls, I think that's a different discussion. I think there's a different value there. And I think that's almost more of a PR thing with USC right now of like, yeah, enough of this. Like, we're getting our guy back. Like, I think there's probably different scenarios there for each of them. But yeah, I think that's going to largely depend on what Ohio State's able to do here, the next 2 months, I guess, until we at least see what the Bill Belichick experience looks like at North Carolina. And like, not to get off topic here, but there's no question that what the Bill Belichick experience looks like at North Carolina is going to be one of the 5 biggest stories in college football this year, right? I mean, that's going to be not must see TV.
Yeah, it will be. And just to put a bow on the Weatherspoon discussion, the UNC sites were saying that he made an official visit there, and I don't even know if that was ever reported. So
I don't think it was.
Yeah, so it's just kind of one of those things. If these kids are operating in silence and doing things like that, maybe the antenna should be up a bit more. Although it's hard for your antenna to go up when you don't even really know what's happening. So I guess yeah.
Right, and we're kind of in a weird period right now with the summer. There's so much going on with camps and official visits that you're not maybe so much suspecting that your in-state commit for the last, however many months it's been is slipping off to North Carolina. But I think to your point though, in your question about would they just have I think if it's true, if he's slipped off to North Carolina on official and didn't tell Ohio State that, I think that also makes it harder to kind of go back. Say what you will about Naeem Offord. You can have everyone's entitled to their opinion on how he handled his recruiting process. He always told Tim Walton what he was doing. So you can't really play we didn't know with Naeem Offord. He told Tim Walton where he was going, when he was going. And so, yeah, I think when you don't do that, it creates a little more hard feelings. But like I said, I think Jakob's a really good player. I think he's a really versatile player. I've certainly enjoyed covering him. And so it was a little surprising to see that. And, we'll see what happens there the next few months with North Carolina and everything else going on with the Bill Belichick first year and how that's going to go. Moving on, some big decisions coming up in the world of Ohio State recruiting, including tomorrow, Jaquaden Guilford, a 4-star wide receiver, was going to announce the end of June. And, Ohio State had been picking up a lot of momentum through the months of May and June. Then he sets the June date, and your initial thought is like, oh, that's good for Ohio State. But as it turned out, it kind of wasn't. Ole Miss had really made a move on their official visit and had really kind of pushed, I don't even want to call it a narrative because it's not really a narrative if it's pretty true, is that look, easier path to the field here than in Columbus. Why don't you come here, play a little bit earlier, or, be guaranteed more things early than you might be in Ohio State. I think he was listening to a lot of that. Declines to go through with his decision. I said at the time, this is probably good for Ohio State. Not that it was a guarantee he would end up at Ohio State, but do you feel like this kind of cooling off period over the last 3 to 4 weeks, do you think this has lined up well for Ohio State to get some good news on Friday?
Yeah, it seems like, or it feels like the momentum is back in Brian Hartline's favor on this one, which shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. I know a lot of people will see this and say, oh, great, another wide receiver, the 5th wide receiver in the class that's going to be committed. And I've talked to either you or Tom about this before, but, being the 5th wide receiver committed doesn't mean you're like the wide receiver 5 in the class. I mean, Hartline is seeing this kid all the time. They're familiar with him. Ole Miss isn't Georgia or anything, but they're pretty dang good when it comes to skill position players, especially at wide receiver. So, I mean, he's a really good player, and I think you're exactly right. The delayed decision has kind of swung things back in Brian Hartline's favor on this one.
Yeah, Ole Miss is a bit of a wide receiver factory. I mean, if you kind of look at it, DK Metcalf, Elijah Moore, AJ Brown, Trey Harris this year in the draft, so they know what they're doing with wide receivers, really about as well as anybody. So the idea that those two are the finalists, I would think should make people feel pretty comfortable about the evaluation on this kid. Jaquaden's been a pleasure to talk to here the last few months leading up to the decision. Has always seemed to me when I've talked to him, just kind of enamored with Brian Hartline's development, with Ohio State's pedigree at receiver. And again, I think we're talking about 17, 18-year-old kids. They're getting pulled in many, many different directions. Now you're throwing money into the equation even more. So you're asking these guys to make grown-up decisions. And I think things got a little cloudy for him there in June. And I thought it took a lot of maturity, even if he doesn't pick Ohio State on Friday. I'll get this out of the way now. Even if he doesn't pick Ohio State on Friday, I thought it took a lot of maturity to say, you know what, I might be rushing this. Let me take a few weeks. Let's get into the dead period when I can't really be on campuses and get away from the visits and just kind of hang out with my family and talk about this. And let's make a more informed, less emotional decision. I thought it was very mature of him to do that. Very self-aware. I agree, though. I can't say it's good news for Ohio State and then hear what I'm hearing now and think, well, it's not going to be Ohio State. So my pick is Ohio State on Friday for Guilford. And yes, you said it very well. Just because he's the last guy in doesn't mean he's the last guy on the board or the worst of the group. I mean, even if you look at past history, I remember a time when everyone was obsessed with Julian Fleming while they picked up this 3-star from Texas named Jackson Smith-Njigba. So like, this doesn't always work the way we think it's going to work. So I would, in today's landscape where everything is so crazy, I would value every kid who says yes to Ohio State, because they're getting a lot of money offered to them to go somewhere else, to play earlier somewhere else, to whatever somewhere else. And they're choosing Ohio State. So I would value every commitment at this point in this ridiculous landscape. So I think they're going to get some good news on Friday. Brian Hartline is the best at this, right? Is there a better recruiter right now among the assistant coaches in college football? I don't think there is.
No, there's not. If you're doubting his ability to do anything right now, it's just silly, whether it's a 3-star kid, a 4-star kid, or Jeremiah Smith. So,
yep. And, I'll squeeze in something else there. This has been my argument on offensive coordinator, which will be fascinating this year with the play calling duties and how that's going to look. My thing on that would be, okay, people that are nervous, fine, but shouldn't you give him the benefit of the doubt on that? Like, what has he failed at so far? Going back to high school, what has he failed at? He's everything he's put his mind to, he's been good at since high school. Track, the 3-star receiver that goes to the NFL, and then he's not even a first or second round, he's like a mid-round draft pick, and he becomes a really good NFL player and gets a big contract at some point from the Dolphins, and then he comes in and he's quality control guy, and he's just here because he's a former player, and then he gets then everyone freaked out when he got the receiver's job because, well, you just gave that to him and he's got no experience doing it, and he crushed that. And so, like, I just think this is a guy you give the benefit of the doubt to whenever you can. And so we'll see what happens Friday, but I think we're on the same page here. I think it's going to be good news for Ohio State. So let's get to 2 more. We'll get to 3 more decisions, actually. But we're going to talk about 2 more that we had kind of planned on. And there's another one that's maybe worth paying attention to. We'll get into that. But Duce Gerald's 4-star defensive lineman, top 100 player, August 2nd. This is the one there's always 1 or 2 kids a year. Like, I generally try not to put pressure on myself with this stuff because they're not mine. I can only tell you what I hear from people. Like, I can't be I can't know what the kids are going to do before the kids know what the kids are going to do. So it's one of those things where I try not to I want to be right, but I also I can't beat myself up in the NIL era of if I'm wrong about something, but there's always 1 or 2 where I'm like, I've gotten pretty close to these recruitments. I need to get this one. This is probably Duce Gerald's for me this year. Andrew, where are you at personally? It doesn't feel like you're very bullish, or are you? And think maybe kind of where are you at this point?
No, any glimmer of optimism I have is entirely because of your updates of late. I was confident early on, and then now they've got 3 defensive linemen, 3 defensive tackles committed. Not that they're all the same player, and not that Gerald's is the same as the other 3. But it just seems like the buzz, at least from the national perspective, has kind of blown more towards Oregon and maybe even Michigan there for a bit. Ole Miss was confident there too for a period. So maybe Ohio State has kind of just been lurking in the back here the entire time, and they're going to surprise some people. But I'm not optimistic, but you're giving me a little bit of hope with this one.
Yeah, I've got another week or 2 probably where I can kind of wait. If I don't want to go down with the ship, but if the decision was tomorrow, I'd probably be going down with the ship on this. And there's a few reasons. One, everyone at Collins Hill that I've talked to for the last 6 months has said that Duce just has an affinity for Ohio State. And if there's one school that might be able to pull him away from that, it's Ole Miss, where his dad played. So, and I talked to Duce after his visit. So I got the quotes and everything else. That's fine. How much do I put into that? Not much. The kids know when I'm interviewing them and when I'm just talking to them. So I know they're savvy. Duce is savvy. We've been down there 3 years in a row in Southern Swing and done 20-minute interviews with them. And so he knows how to, he he knows what to say, maybe what to keep to himself. But what I found interesting was when he talked to the national reporters, how much Oregon, Michigan, LSU were coming up and how little Ohio State and Ole Miss were coming up. Now, pre-NIL, I would have told you it was a dead giveaway that he was going to Ohio State or Ole Miss. This is clearly build up. This is a smoke screen to get everybody off the trail of his two favorites within, 4 to 6 weeks before his decision. And I probably would have been right about that 95% of the time pre-NIL. But now it's like, okay, like how much do I put into what he tells national people? Because I know what he's told me, but he also knows who I cover too. So is it conceivable that Oregon is coming in and saying, okay, here's 2 or 3x what Ole Miss and Ohio State may be bringing to the table, and that is just such a shock to these kids' systems when they get these types of offers from schools that he's like, yeah, these school, I'm just gonna go, I can get 2 or 3x somewhere. I'm gonna go do that. I'm not convinced that's the case here, and I'm just not. And like, there's some stuff I'll probably be able to explain a little better after he decides, whether that's Ohio State or anybody else. It's not going to change whether I can explain things or my point of view. But there's some things I probably shouldn't say in terms of confidence of people and everything else until he announces. But what I will say is, a lot of times when these kids leave their visits at Ohio State, you'll get intel from the Ohio State side of things, and they might say, yeah, this kid's going to take the top dollar figure, or this is all about money, and we don't know if we're going to be competitive enough to da-da-da-da-da. That was not the feedback I got on Gerald's. The feedback I got on Gerald's coming out of that was that they were relatively in good spirits about how the NIL discussions went on that visit with Duce and his family. So we will see. He did promise Larry Johnson Ohio State would be his last official, which he did. On Ohio State's end, they don't feel they have a player like him in this class in terms of his skill set. He's a little different than the other guys, especially the 2 bigger tackles. Like they're like pluggers. Duce, you can line up on the edge. I mean, you can line him up a variety of ways. So he's a little bit more versatile than what they've got. And the one thing that's kind of always stuck with me is some of these guys aren't like super, like, I think everyone thinks, all 85 players on a football roster are like alpha personalities. That's not remotely true. In fact, I would argue Ohio State had fewer alphas than non-alphas on last year's team in terms of just personality traits, like big personalities. But Duce is an alpha. Ohio State knows that. And Ohio State's never been like, you have to be an alpha to play here. But they've always kind of been, especially on defense, they've been a little leery about that. Like, we need at least 1 or 2 of them at every layer of the defense. Like, we don't need 5 linebackers that are alphas, but if we have 5 of them, at least 2 of them better be. Like, that's how they feel about Duce. He's an energy bringer. He's an energy giver. He's not an energy taker. He's just high motor, just competitive, runs practices, like in terms of getting people going for practice. So I think he's always had a lot of value to Ohio State. And so that's my long-winded response of saying I'm sticking with Ohio State right now. There's no doubt, as I said on our board the other day, there's no doubt, like, I'm going to put a lot of my focus the next 2 weeks on continuing to dig on this, making sure, like, where's the smoke screen? Has Ohio State and Ole Miss slipped, or is that the smoke screen, which I kind of suspect it is. But I'm going to keep digging on that one, and we'll see what happens. You and I, I'm sure, will be talking on here before that decision goes down, maybe giving some final thoughts. But so that's where we have that one. So we're a little bit different on that one. Then there's another big one, August 22nd. I keep saying 23rd. I've joking before we started. I keep saying it's August 23rd. My mom's birthday is August 23rd. That's why I keep getting this confused. Brilan Wack, August 22nd, 5-star safety out of Mississippi. Andrew, are they really going to get a safety from LSU and a safety from Mississippi in the same class? That's like winning the Powerball, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it. Like right now, it seems like it's happening, but there's always the NIL stuff and blah, blah, blah. Auburn's involved, A&M, Florida. I mean, it's Ohio State versus the SEC. And there's, again, we talked about it a few weeks back. It would have been nice, or I would have felt better if he was announcing like 2 days after the Ohio State official visit in late June or whenever that was. But we've still got another month till that decision's going down. And his sister is still at Auburn. He could make trips to Auburn and visit, and probably will during the season, regardless of who he commits to on August 22nd. So, I mean, it seems like they're going to get it done. But if I had to put like a personal confidence level on that, it's probably like between like a 2 and a 4, and not like a 7 or an 8. So that's just me.
Yeah. I got a really good vibe from him in May on our trip down there to the school. But like you said, he like sets the date, several months in advance, but then still has all the visits, and you're going to get the late, like, I'll just call it a desperation offer, because it's what it is. I mean, you have schools come in at the last minute and they don't think they're getting a player, so they'll say, "Oh, well, actually, cross out that last number. Here's a bigger number, or how many zeros on this thing." Like, so that's always the unpredictable part of this now, which wasn't as unpredictable, 5-6 years ago. Very good relationships at Ohio State. I think the Bradford thing actually helps them. I think the way that Guerreri and Walton have laid this out for both of them, and how they can play off of each other, and how this can work, and how that one, you can have the ransom downs thing, has actually helped them. I think A&M, Florida, and especially A&M and Florida, but even Ole Miss to an extent, not showing that they can kind of be legitimate championship contenders yet is helping Ohio State. But yeah, the Auburn factor is interesting, and that came up. We were down there. His sister's at Auburn, and you're exactly right. He can commit to Ohio State on August 22nd. You're going to see him show up at, like, your people. Like, remember, I'm saying this: if he commits to Ohio State on August 22nd, he's going to visit Auburn this fall, whether he's committed there or not. He's going to be there. His sister's there. It's not a bad drive for the family. Like, he's going to go. You're going to see that happen regardless. So. I think that's maybe the one to watch, because it would be so comfortable for everybody in his circle. And because I do think he means maybe more to Auburn than any of the 4 schools. Not that Auburn's prioritizing him more. I don't think anyone's prioritizing him, necessarily more than anyone. I think he's a big time priority for all 4, but I think Auburn's maybe a little more desperate for guys like him to win recruiting battles like this. Ohio State's won these types of battles. A&M's won these types of battles. Florida's won these. Auburn's trying to, like, get themselves back into this thing nationally. And so I just think they're a little bit more operating from a bit of a desperate place. So we'll see. But I agree with you. I think, again, if I had to pick today, I'd still pick Ohio State. And does it matter where he picks August 22nd? Is it going to be over? What do you think?
I probably not. I mean, over as far as maybe he signs with the school that he commits to, yes. But as you said, if he picks Ohio State, every time he ends up in Auburn, the Auburn writers are going to be tweeting eyeball emojis and stuff like that, and it's just something we'll have to deal with.
Yeah, it's 1,000%. And like I said this, months ago when Blaine Bradford committed, and then I doubled down on it again after we met with him in May, and I just said, look, there's nothing Blaine has said or done that makes me think he's wavering on his Ohio State commitment. But there are 1,000% going to be stories written in the last 6 months of this recruiting process about him and LSU. It may be entirely media driven. It may be local media driven. It may be national media driven, but it's going to happen. This isn't going to be quiet down the stretch, no matter how much Blaine would like it to be, no matter how much he would like to not be talking about this. It's going to constantly come up. And I think there's going to be a little bit of that with Womack. Again, with the sister at Auburn, with Florida, with the type of teams that are recruiting him and how badly they all want him. I think we're going to keep talking about this one. Unfortunately, we're going to probably have to, regardless of whether Brilan is giving us reason to or not, probably well into the fall. But I like where Ohio State stands. And who knows? Maybe the Weatherspoon thing freed up some cap space. I don't know. Maybe that freed up some cap space. Okay. So those were who we were kind of going to talk about. But then Duron Parks locks in July 26th. He is a high 3, low 4-star offensive lineman, depending on who you get your rankings from. He is currently in Sarasota, Florida. He is from West Virginia, about 2 hours from Columbus, and actually has told me in the past he considers Ohio State kind of his home state school growing up. There's not a lot of buzz right now around Ohio State here, Andrew. You and I were talking about it before we started, and was it Florida State and Kentucky? I think you said you're kind of seeing and hearing the most about.
Yeah, I read an update on a Florida State site, and they did not even mention Ohio State, which maybe they know more than I do. I don't know. You got 4 offensive linemen committed right now. You got your 2 tackles, which is great. But could they take another guy as an interior type? I probably would, but I have no idea if how hard they are pushing right now, I guess is what I'll say.
Yeah, this is interesting. He's kind of just lurked. Like, he came out of the gate and it looked like he was one of their top targets because he's from West Virginia and Fry was there. New O-line coach. He moves to Florida. He's not a talker. Like, he's been great with me because I've been to his school and so I can get a hold of him, but he's not a guy who's like constantly doing interviews and things like that is what I'm kind of saying. Like, he's not a big like interview after every visit and, type of kid. And that's kind of, so he quietly like visited during the spring and then he did the OV and so he's kind of just been kind of floating under the radar. So my understanding is Ohio State will take him on July 26th. They would take him. Now, are they going to be the highest? Are they going to be the biggest NIL offer here? Probably not, because like you said, they've got their tackles. They've got 4 linemen committed. They've got their Ohio guys that they've coveted. And it would appear that you look at a school like Florida State, for example, or Kentucky, boy, are those offensive lines, especially Florida State's, those offensive lines have struggled recently. And so they are really, Florida State's gone full bore after Duron since he arrived in Sarasota. So that could be tough to overcome here. But I'm keeping an eye on this. We're like a little more than a week out. I would take the field. I think, Andrew, are you in that boat as well? Would you take the field or?
I probably would, whether it's Florida State or Kentucky. Auburn is out there too, I think, as a contender.
Yeah, I might be taking the field right now, but I think to your point of like Ohio State not really being mentioned on other, I wouldn't be going that far. I think they're still lurking here. There is still a spot for Duron Parks in Columbus if he wants it. And so we'll just see, has the communication been there? I think it probably has the last few months. They went through the coaching change. I don't know that I don't know how smooth the transition was from Fry to Bowen with Duron specifically, especially when he moved from West Virginia to Florida and all that. I think that didn't help either for Ohio State. But I'm still keeping an eye on this one. I'm not writing this one off. I'm not telling everyone to not worry about that, next week. I think it's going to be Saturday, next Saturday. Yeah. So let's maybe we'll revisit this next week and just kind of see. But we are keeping an eye on it, guys, at over BuckeyeHuddle.com. We are still, we're still kicking some tires on that one and seeing where that one's at, despite, again, a kind of a lack of Ohio State discussion maybe in other markets or around this recruitment. I am told that they're still kind of taking their swings. So we will see what happens. Can
I throw one more bonus one at you?
Yes. I was gonna say any parting thoughts or topics we need to talk about.
Yeah, so I think people might ask why we didn't even mention Derek Cooper, who is committing on Sunday evening. And we both have him as out, obviously. But you've been right about one thing. You've been saying all along that your people are telling you he probably will not end up in the state of Florida, regardless of what the Miami side has been saying. Took his officials, Georgia, Ohio State, Miami, and then out of nowhere, the folks in Austin seem to be swooping in, even though he hasn't made an official visit there. So it does seem like he will be playing outside of the state of Florida, but it does not seem like it will be in Athens or in Columbus. So, yeah.
I am going to shout out my guy. I'm not going to give out his name, but I got to shout him out because when we were down there in May, the same person who told me he didn't think he was going to stay in state said, and he said, he's like, I think it's Georgia 1, Ohio State 2 right now. But he said, and you'll go back, you will read this on the board. If you go back and read my post on this on the board from May, it'll be in there. He said, watch out for Texas. He said, keep an eye on Texas. Like he just made like his first visit there or something. Like he had just come back from there not too long ago. And they were like, man, that went really well. I know he's not saying it. I know like they haven't been linked to him. And I think you're right. You know, he's telling me that he thought I was right when I told him I thought it was Ohio State or Georgia. He's like, no, I think that's right now. But he's like, don't completely discount Texas. And so if that comes to fruition, I am going to have to buy him dinner next time I'm in Fort Lauderdale, because that was a phenomenal call that I wasn't even willing to make. I kind of threw it in there as a throwaway, but I'm like, well, I'm not going to say Texas is top 2. I was like, you can, I mean, I'll say that, they're kind of lurking, but I'm not going to go out there and make that call right now. But he was kind of influencing that. And I'm like, hey, Texas, be careful. So if he's right, dinner's on me next time I'm in Fort Lauderdale, because that was a really good call. But I don't think it's going to happen for Ohio State. I think there's 2 things here. I think one, they just took 3 running backs. And so they love Derek Cooper. They're not as high on Derek Cooper. Nothing like it. They love Derek Cooper. But they just took 3 and they've got 1 committed. In a salary cap era, for lack of a better term, you're only going to push so hard on the NIL front with running backs when you just took 3 the year before. Like there's only so much of the pie that can be split. And so I think, again, I just think there's probably a dollar and cents equation here. I also think a roster spacing thing of like, look, if Derek wants in, we'd love to have Derek. Like he's an amazing running back. Maybe I think Ohio State probably thinks he's either the first or second best running back in America. But they've also grown enamored with David Georges out of the French Canadian. Yes, we have maybe a French Canadian running back commit in 2027. We'll see if that happens. Out of Chattanooga now via Quebec, and I think they feel good about where that is. And I just think like with roster spacing, it's like, how much are you going to actually put into the NIL pie for the running back position this cycle versus, you got defensive line stuff you got to figure out. You've got offensive line stuff you've got to figure out. You're in on some big names at some other positions that, you're still in on or that you've closed on, such as a Blaine Bradford. And I just think they're not going to be able to be as competitive. And I think ultimately, if he goes to Texas over Georgia, I think you're going to have the same thing kind of with Georgia. I think Georgia has handled its process very similarly to Ohio State the last few years in terms of how they go about things, how they value certain things, and what they're willing to do. But you're right.
And if that does happen, if your guy's right on Cooper, Georgia and Ohio State can relate, because it's been a big week for them in terms of missing on guys to Texas. Because credit where credit's due. Texas has had a heck of a week on the trail. So
yeah, and like the same thing, like Tyler Atkinson. Well, Georgia and Ohio State, but Texas, and it's like, well, yeah. Look, like Georgia and Ohio State are only going to do so much at certain positions with certain, with the layouts of their rosters right now. And so I think obviously the writing was on the wall with Atkinson when the official didn't happen, which, by the way, was supposed to happen June 20th. That obviously got changed. That was set up at one point, got changed, and the writing was on the wall there. But then, for Georgia, I think that was probably a bigger loss for Georgia. I think Ohio State fans, regardless of the comments Tyler made over the years, just knowing getting a 5-star linebacker out of Georgia away from everybody was going to be tough. Like I think Ohio State fans had a relatively easy letdown there on that one specifically. But for Georgia, that had to be a little bit brutal, I think.
I'm old enough to remember when Tyler Atkinson told you and Kevin that Ohio State was the leader, and
at the top.
At the top. And I obviously you guys did not buy that, but you also cannot just totally scoff at somebody giving their comments. But I think, yeah. And
like, it's almost surprising. I don't know if it's surprising it was Texas though, because like I think Oregon was a school with Atkinson early on, where it was like, okay, he likes Ohio State and Georgia, but like, let's see what Oregon does here. And then that moved over into Texas, which, by the way, is kind of another tiny little thing about, okay, are Tyler Atkinson and Duce Gerald's a package deal? Absolutely not. But they are very good friends. And would Gerald's go all the way across the country to Oregon without Atkinson? Like, wouldn't the comfortable thing for Gerald's be to go to Ohio State or Ole Miss, where he's got the relationships?
Yeah, good point. Good question. Yeah.
Just food for thought. Let us know. Let us know in the comments where you think Duce Gerald is going. But yeah, very interesting couple weeks coming up, Andrew. We'll be covering it all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Appreciate Andrew joining us as always. His contributions over at the website on the board have been tremendous. And we look forward, again, to kind of bringing you what we're hearing the next few weeks as these recruitments play out. But yes, we'll be back again here with another one probably earlier next week. Back on schedule. I'm back from vacation, and we're all ready to roll, get back on more of a weekly schedule here with the Skull Session podcast. So thanks, everyone, for watching and listening, and we'll talk to you again soon.